Tapas? What's that? The same question even I had, but once I came inside the school, no, sorry. It's an more like an experience center, not a school. It is really amazing. The best place for our kids' curiosity to be looked after. And I think it is very close to reality. They want, the kids are more curious what is happening. So it is nice that there is a different way of learning. So it is very good, different approach for us to come into the world. Thank you.
I'm right now in a campus that has been designed by children from across India and where students run.
I've been thinking a lot lately. My son is 2, he is curious and full of questions. But I keep wondering what kind of learning should truly honor that spirit.
I recently visited Tapas early years, and honestly, it felt like stepping into a world where learning is alive. The children weren't just being taught, they were discovering. 5-year-olds had set up their own cafe. Yes, really. From baking, taking orders, even reminding parents not to waste food. I saw kids leading, creating, serving with such quiet confidence. There was this other project where fashion became a way to express identity. They stitched, sketched, even explored geometry through beads and block printing. Learning math and design without even realizing they were learning.
And what really stayed with me is how tapas nurtured every layer of a child's being. Body, mind, soul, heart and energy. All through something called Panchakosha Vikasa.
It's not just about ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's movement, emotion, storytelling, problem solving, life.
He's not in school yet, but if this is what school can look like, I can't wait.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 2 of Tapas Project Shaala. I'm Preeti Vikram, founder of Tapas Progressive School. Absolutely excited to be here after an amazing day 1 where we had 2 fantastic speakers. We are here with 2 more speakers who are excellent and subject matter experts in whatever they are doing. And without further ado, I would like to jump into what we have for all of you today. We are a project-based learning school, and so I wanted to tell you a little bit about how we do learning at Tapas and what project-based learning looks like, and I'll connect it to why we have Jane Munn as the speaker today. Project-based learning essentially means that we start with a burning question, something that really affects us in today's world, and learning is contextualized based on that question. I'll give you an example. I think the year before we had a question which was, how do we learn about the city planning of Indus Valley civilization and apply that to the traffic problem of Bangalore? Because everybody knows Bangalore has traffic problems. So the question was rooted in today's context because the learners are traveling through traffic and looking at their their own localities, their neighborhoods, but it was also rooted in history. There was so much of learning that happened about the history, the geography of where the Indus Valley civilization was, the city planning, the math was involved, science was involved, global perspective was involved. So essentially we are looking at learning becoming real, contextual, and solving a problem of in their current context. So this is the way we learn at Tapas, and these projects are absolutely transdisciplinary. We ensure that students are not thinking of it as, is this a math problem or is this a science problem, but they are looking at learning as something that's transdisciplinary, and they're able to go beyond textbooks, go beyond the kind of learning that's required for exams, right? So having built this kind of an ecosystem in which learners are thriving, when it came to the fact that we had to now choose a board to affiliate with, we were really lost about which board would really meet the needs of Tapas and the learners and the kind of learning that we were doing at Tapas, right? So during this discussion, I was really fortunate to have Jane Munn's insights, and she connected me to the right people about learning more about the Cambridge board. And so, through that connection, I'm truly honored today to bring Jane Munn to this forum so that she can talk to us about her views of education and what the future of education is going to look like. And with that, um, Jane, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Preeti. It's lovely to be here.
And I want to tell the audience a little bit about you. So, Jane is the Managing Director of the Partnership for Education and Education Director of the International Education Group at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. She's worked in the education sector for nearly 3 decades, advising on implementing and managing programs of system level change and improvement across diverse contexts, including education in emergencies. She has worked with ministries of education, government agencies, NGOs, donor agencies, and educational organizations to support large scale transformation through targeted specific interventions. She's been a speaker at events such as the Education World Forum, London Book Fair, Transforming Education Summit, Global Online Learning Alliance, and the Global Education Summit. She is a governing body fellow of Hughes Hall, University of Cambridge, a member of the Centre for Study of Global Human Movement, University of Cambridge, part of the Brain Trust for World in 2050, a Salzburg Global Seminar Fellow, and a member of the BISA Executive Council. Jane, it is such an honor to have you be part of the Tapas Project Shaala. And now the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Preeti. And I'm so excited to be here. So good evening to everyone. This is my first Tapas Project Shaala, and this is just wonderful to be sharing some thoughts with you. So I don't know if my slides are showing. There they go. Great. So Preeti's already given you an extensive introduction to who I am, which is brilliant. So you might have noticed in that introduction that I have 2 hats at Cambridge. I am the education director for our international education group. So in that role, I lead the teams that are looking at the future of education. So we're looking at that through the lenses of impact, through research, thought leadership, and partnerships. And that's to support education across the world. And it's particularly working with our own Cambridge schools, of which, of course, Tapas is one. And secondly, I'm managing director, as Preeti said, of the Partnership for Education. And so that team works directly with governments, international development organizations, and other education organizations to develop national education systems. And we also look at, as Preeti said, education in emergencies. So we're also working in fragile contexts, in conflict zones, and in refugee camps. And as you can imagine, all of those experiences influence and inform each other a great deal. So I'll be sharing some insights today, both from classroom level, across all sorts of spectrums of education, but also thinking about wider education systems. And as you know, I've been invited to talk about something that is on everyone's minds, I think, a lot. It's certainly on my mind, it's on the minds of all of my colleagues at Cambridge, and I'm sure it's on your mind, which is about future-proofing learning. So in a world where we are increasingly influenced by AI, what skills do our children actually need to prepare them for the future, for their journeys ahead? What will they need for work, for life, to thrive, and for flourishing? And I think Tapas Project Shaala is such a special place to talk about this, because you are already committed to holistic development, making sure there's rich, relevant life skills being taught, student engagement, supporting your teachers. And those are precisely the anchors that matter as technology accelerates. So over the next, I think, about 15, 20 minutes or so, I will share how we don't need to reinvent the wheel in the face of AI. We need to make sure we double down on the delivery and evolution of those kind of anchors globally. So we need to embrace the tools that we have to do that appropriately. So before I go on to talk about the future, I want to talk a little bit about the present. In 2026, we are not on track on global commitments to ensure every learner is equipped with even the basics like literacy and numeracy. So that's a core part of the UN Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is quality education for all. So that's the goal that sticks with me and that I think of all the time. So back in 2022, UNESCO and the World Bank declared an education emergency. And they warned that 70% of 10-year-olds in low and middle income countries couldn't read and understand a simple text. And they termed that measure learning poverty. And in the years since then, progress on it, frankly, has been uneven. And there are real concerns that recovery is completely stalled in some context. And that's why this call to action remains absolutely urgent. Reach every child, assess learning regularly, prioritize fundamentals, and support teachers to drive learning gains. In India, the National Education Policy of 2020 could not be clearer on this. It stresses our highest priority must be to achieve universal foundational literacy and numeracy in primary school. And despite meaningful progress in many areas, that goal has not fully been achieved yet either, and we've got to keep it at the forefront. And this, of course, is a large part of what Tapas was formed and founded to combat, and why you've chosen to take a different progressive route through education. And in fact, your journey at Tapas is one I identify with in many ways. So one of the hats that we talked about earlier that I wear at Cambridge is to lead the Partnership for Education team. And we launched that new team during the COVID-19 pandemic, surrounded by immense learning losses, which was, I know, at the time when Tapas was forming as well. And 5 years ago, education development was largely focused on how we recover those learning losses from COVID. Today, even though we're far from catching up on that, we've also rapidly introduced this dual challenge, which is to prepare learners for a fast-changing future. The biggest change, of course, that we're talking about when we talk about a fast-changing future is, for most people, AI. Last year, as part of a wider piece of work on how we prepare learners for the future, we polled adults in urban India, and we found that 46% believed that AI and automation is the top challenge for education to prepare the next generation for. Regardless of whether or not you agree with that, that was a really strong finding from that research. AI has been with us for decades, but public perceptions and day-to-day practices with AI have really shifted since the public preview of ChatGPT back in November 2022. So to talk about what that means for learning, I want to just set the scene a little bit with what AI is, and almost more importantly, what it isn't. So to start, we need really clear foundations, which unfortunately can easily become muddled as AI gets better and better at what it does. Since about 2022, 2023, I've had lots of discussions with one of the members of our expert advisory board at Cambridge, Professor Rose Luckin, who is someone that Preeti knows too. Rose is one of the only people who's been talking about AI in education since before the millennium. And she's also joined some of those conversations with our Cambridge Google DeepMind professor, Neil Lawrence. And my biggest takeaway from those conversations is that artificial intelligence and human intelligence work differently, and one is in no way a substitute for the other. AI is a statistical pattern engine, so it handles huge volumes of information effortlessly, it excels at routine, but when it comes to making ethical decisions or facing ambiguity, AI struggles. These limits that AI experiences aren't temporary technical problems, but they're fundamental characteristics of how AI systems work. Humans, on the other hand, we respond, we adapt, we reflect, we resist. And in fact, those are some of the core human qualities that Professor Neil Lawrence says make up the essence of what he calls the atomic human. And that is the subject of a book he's written recently on the topic, which I really recommend to you. It's an excellent book. So right now, it could be argued that most education systems don't do enough to nurture our atomic human traits. Last year at Cambridge, we published a report about this, and we called it Humans at the Heart of Education. So just a side note on this, I hate the phrase humans in the loop, because I think it really trivializes the role of the human and of human intelligence. So for us, it's very much humans at the heart. And in that report, we propose that education needs to equip learners with two things. So firstly, the deeply human capabilities that AI can't replace. And secondly, the capacity to work with AI ethically, safely, and effectively. So how do we go about that? Humans at the Heart proposes 3 pillars. The first pillar, we need to build whole person education. If AI can replace us, then we're not teaching the right things. We need holistic education that nurtures what is uniquely human. And this is something you are very familiar with in the Tapas community. The second pillar, we need to build change with people across the system. Long-lasting change has to involve teachers, learners, families, employers, local communities, and that needs to be from design all the way through to implementation. It's only by doing that that you can really raise trust and therefore improve outcomes. And the last pillar is that we must equip and support teachers to be the agents of change. Research has long shown that teachers have the biggest impact of any school factor on student learning outcomes. And now we have new possibilities to support teachers. Technology should be reducing the time spent on administrative tasks, freeing teachers up for them to focus on those really hard to teach human skills. The world's going to need about 44 million more teachers by 2030 to meet global targets. And let's face it, that's not a problem we're going to recruit ourselves out of. So strengthening and supporting the teachers we do have is a non-negotiable for quality education for all. And it's definitely the most potent ingredient for a truly transformative education. So if we're thinking of transformative education and those hard to teach human skills, what are some of those human capabilities and what is contained within a holistic education? What are those future skills that we need to embed in our schools? This is a slide with a lot of very small words on it, which I apologize for, but don't worry, I'm going to talk you through it. So if you can't see it, don't panic. So what these future skills really are and what they mean, we're currently exploring this question nonstop at Cambridge, and it's one to which the answer will, of course, continue to evolve and we will continue to focus on. And as part of that exploration, we're listening very closely to our schools. So last year, we conducted a research project with almost 7,000 teachers and students from across 150 countries. And we also spoke to 50 experts across education, education psychology, technology, and policy. There is so much rich data in that research report, which we'll link to so you can read it. But I wanted today to pull out 3 qualities that came to the fore around navigating the future. So in our survey, we asked students to describe in 3 words the qualities of someone who they believe is ready for their future after finishing education. And the words that students expressed most often were confidence, determination, and being responsible. And I love these because they are really, they really align with what Professor Lawrence was talking about with that idea of the atomic human. These are the essential human qualities. When you strip back everything that AI can do, these are really human qualities. Together, these qualities are that triad of human strengths that AI can't ape. AI is definitely confident, particularly when it's wrong about something, I find, but it doesn't balance its confidence with responsibility. AI can diligently produce an answer, but it isn't determined like people. And in fact, last year, researchers found almost 60% of all chatbot interactions in a study they did displayed really sycophantic behavior. I'm sure we've all experienced it, where the chatbot prioritizes agreeing with the user approvingly over truthfulness or accuracy or decency. So to dig deeper after these sort of top qualities, we asked students and teachers what they believed were the most important aspects of the future that schools should prepare students for. And we gave them a list of options. And from those options, the teachers, who were in the kind of teal or turquoise color in that middle graph, placed the greatest emphasis on thinking skills and life skills, followed by a love of learning and emotional well-being. And I think that really reflects the fact that these teachers know their students are going to need to be lifelong learners. They're going to have to equip themselves and re-equip themselves with different skills to adapt throughout their lives. The students, who are the ones in purple, also highlighted skills, thinking skills and life skills, but not as strongly as teachers did. And unlike teachers, significantly more students rated career readiness and entry for higher education as their highest priority. And I think that showed that they were really laser focused simply on the next step, rather than what they might need for their lifelong future, for all aspects. And I think that's hardly surprising given the increasing competition and uncertainty about how AI will disrupt career and education pathways. And this really struck a chord for me, not just professionally, but as a parent too. I have 3 sons who are 20, 18 and 15, so they're all in those different parts of their journey. And I feel their anxiety as well about what will happen in the future. And really their only way to deal with it is just the very next step that they're going to take. And it becomes obsessive almost, and a real point of anxiety. And of course, confidence, determination, and being responsible, those 3 qualities are absolutely key foundations for all of these aspects of their next steps. I don't need to tell this gathering about the confidence and determination that's needed for our young people applying to university or to their first job. We all, I'm sure, know what that's like. And if we haven't nurtured those qualities much earlier in students' lives, it can be really difficult to do so at speed in the moment, especially as this moment is when children usually really experience rejection for the first time. I think similarly, being responsible is such a core part of social skills, which was another thing that students rated highly. And the internet has really upped the ante here. It can be really easy to hide and comment anonymously and to act irresponsibly online. And students can see every day other people doing so. So developing that moral compass means a great deal at this age. So what are the skills themselves? If we look to the graph on the right now, we asked teachers and students which skills categories, as well as subject knowledge and values, they viewed as important for students to learn. So the lighter colour you can see on that graph is the percentage of respondents who selected that category as important, and the darker, bolder colour is who selected it as the most important. So when asked to identify what they considered most important, students mostly chose leadership, management and business skills, and then self-management skills and communication skills. Teachers chose self-management skills and leadership, management and business skills, and then thinking and research skills. So you can see there is alignment in those skills they've chosen with slightly different prioritization. And again, those choices really strike me, how nurturing those qualities of confidence, determination, and being responsible are part of developing those skills. In particular, how integral these 3 qualities are to self-management. Our research found some really interesting things about self-management, and quite worrying ones as well, if I'm honest. We found that although everybody agrees self-management is essential, we also found this sort of perfect storm, because teachers rated it as the hardest skill set to teach and students rated it as the hardest to learn. And that skill category includes things like time management, focus, persistence, and handling setbacks. And these are exactly the skills young people will need in their lives and in the workplace, as we've mentioned before, but they're also what we need as a global community right now to deal with challenges like climate change. I think technology is absolutely central to this challenge of self-management, because while technology can support learning, students themselves are self-reporting this concern about distraction, over-reliance on devices, and 88% of teachers have perceived attention spans to be getting shorter due to technology. So as I mentioned, there is a whole lot more in the report, which I hope you'll read, but to prepare learners for the future, they need this sort of holistic education that nurtures these qualities and develops these skills. Just a quick note before I continue to offer a word on knowledge. One of the things I found very worrying was that when considering skills for life beyond education, students deprioritize subject knowledge in our research. They felt that once they left education and entered employment, knowledge would then lose importance. And this really worries me because skills don't exist in a vacuum. We learn them through knowledge, and subject knowledge matters even more in an age of AI. It's the basis for evaluating information and making great decisions. It's what keeps our intellectual autonomy. It's what helps me take a judgment call on whether something I'm reading sounds unlikely or not. And at Cambridge, we recommend reframing knowledge as a lifelong asset, not just some kind of exam currency. I think it's ever more important that we do that in an age of misinformation, which is growing because AI makes it so easy. So in practice, valuing subject knowledge looks like designing lessons where students practice skills alongside acquiring, applying, synthesizing, and critically validating knowledge. And we need to signpost to students explicitly which skills they're building in which subjects so they can develop that really critical metacognition. And this is something that project-based learning can really support, which is why I love what's going on at Tapas. Project-based learning provides great opportunities to make those skills visible, and it's much stronger when we underpin it with clear content goals. So as an example, in a science project on local water quality, we can explicitly label the planning, collaboration, and reflection steps. And the Indus Valley traffic problem made me think of that. In a history session on constitutional debates, we can label reasoning and respectful disagreement being practiced. And that way students and also those supporting them can see how their schoolwork translates into real life. So identifying and naming those skills itself helps boost students' confidence in their capabilities. And that's really important, not just because we've already identified that confidence is essential, but because there's currently a confidence gap. Our survey found a gap between how well prepared students think they are for the future and how well prepared their teachers think they are. So only 45% of students rated themselves as feeling well prepared for their future after education, but their teachers were more positive. So around 3 in 5 teachers felt that their students were well prepared. And I think we can do a lot to close that gap for young people through the way we teach and support them and are explicit about what they can do and what they know and really signposting that for them. There's a whole other presentation I could do there, but I'm very conscious of time. I think innovative classrooms like those fostered at Tapas are also key to embedding some of the other skills that came up as essential for the future in our research. So if you'll forgive me just one more example of one of the skills that came up as most important, and that was communication. Communication needs safe spaces to be learnt and developed and practiced. And in our research, we found that the majority of teachers say that fear of judgment is holding back that interpersonal skill development. And in fact, there was one quote from a student that I felt really heartbreaking, where he said that he knew it was really important to learn communication, but there was absolutely no way he was going to stand up in the classroom and say and communicate in the way he knew he could, because the social stakes were too high and he was too afraid of cancellation. And I think we've got to ensure that classrooms are psychologically safe spaces for students to practice that speaking and listening. And I think that places like Tapas have a huge influence over that. So there are lots of questions ahead, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of yours shortly. And at Cambridge, we are continuing to explore these. So we're asking questions like, how do we assess these future skills? Are traditional exam methods sufficient? Spoiler, no, probably not. But how do we do it meaningfully? How can we equip learners with the skills to lead project-based learning and take other innovative approaches to build new skills? How can we develop digital skills in the classroom safely? And in fact, we've started a global conversation on what we need to do to prepare learners for the future and what that future looks like. And we're calling it Prompt the Future. I'm reclaiming that word prompt because we can't just prompt AI moving forwards. We still need to ask each other those important nuanced questions. So I would love you to take part. Please, if you can, scan that QR code and you can share your thoughts with us. So thank you. I'm going to leave that there for a second. Thank you for your attention. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts and reflections now. So Preeti, I'll hand back over to you for our Q&A. Thank you.
Jane, that was absolutely brilliant. I think in the few minutes that you presented, you walked us through what the problem is and what could potentially be the solution. And I know there's so much of learning over there, especially the slide where you mentioned that we need to look at whole body education, like education being holistic. And I think we have managed to disconnect the brain from the body and unfortunately cater just to the brain alone. And I think by approaching that this is a whole being, and the what you mentioned about knowledge plus values is what will set us apart. Every bit of your conversation, I wish I could make those notes. And I think there's so much of learning that I have taken away from this conversation. um, there are some questions that we do have. While the audience can start putting them up in the comments, there are questions that I personally had, which I thought I should ask you now. Um, One of the things that I constantly struggle with is, as a school, there are some expectations of what our learners should be learning, because the parents have gone through a very traditional, conventional system of learning for exams. Our teachers have gone through the same kind of learning where they've grown up thinking they're learning for the exams. Whereas what we are trying to do is something so different, where we're trying to teach the values and the knowledge, and like I said right at the beginning, which is contextual. In your experience, having worked with so many countries, what is the one common mistake schools are making when trying to redesign this kind of learning?
That's a really difficult question to answer because there are common mistakes. I don't know if there's one, but I can tell you a few that I see. And this counts for up at the kind of meta systems level as well as down at schools level as well. And that's generally borrowing policies or approaches from elsewhere wholesale. So that kind of policy borrowing without local adaptation and without clear communication of the why. And we see it time and time again. I mean, there are some amazing approaches to, for instance, maths, Singapore maths, excellent, but to suddenly say to a teacher in a classroom context, which is wildly different from one in Singapore, we're going to implement Singapore maths without an explanation of how that's going to fit into their context, why it's important, why the change is happening. I see that regularly. I'm seeing it less, I have to say, but I think that policy borrowing without adaptation is an issue, and it's going to become more so with AI. There is a risk there that we see not kind of hyper personalization, but actually hyper standardization because of the influence of one AI over another. I also think that treating technology as some kind of silver bullet is a mistake that I see. So investing in the tools before the pedagogy, losing that alignment and the coherence between what's being taught, what's being assessed, that's a huge risk. And I think actually you asked me what the biggest failure was. There is one, and that is underinvestment in teachers. A great teacher can out-teach even the worst curriculum. The opposite is not true. The best curriculum in the world, if it's placed in the hands of a teacher who's poorly supported, poorly invested in, poorly trained, it won't fly. So I think, investing properly in teacher learning, in teacher time, in teacher development, in teacher support, professionalizing the profession, that's really what drives amazing gains.
Oh, I love that. I think traditionally India has been a country where the parampara, which we call it the Guru Parampara, where we've respected teachers, and there's a very high, status in society for teachers that we had before we were. We went into colonization and changing our education system, all of that. And I think we've somehow lost our understanding of that tradition. And I love what you said. Unless we respect our teachers and empower them and provide them with the platform, I don't think the needle will move much. And
No.
one of the things that I'd love to share with you at Tapas, we believe that the teachers are at the top of the hierarchy, and everybody else in the school is just there to support them to deliver the best lesson they can in the classroom. Like, I think,
I love that.
yeah, I think we just exist because the teacher needs us.
Yeah.
We just that's one of the ways that we've ensured that we've empowered the teachers. Of course, there's a whole lot of things when you visit. I will share with you about how we do that. But I think absolutely you're right. And investing in our teachers has to be important. And the other thing, Jane, I don't know if this is something that happens globally, is that the younger generation are not getting into teaching as much as the previous generations are. Today's generation are
Yeah.
not preferring to get into the education industry. Do you see that? And do you think what do you think could be some reasons for this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a global problem. As I said in my presentation, we've got a global teacher shortage now of 44 million, and we are not going to find 44 million teachers additional teachers by 2030. We are losing teachers from the profession in droves. I mean, just in the UK, in 2024, we lost 40,000 from the profession, not due to retirement. So we have a problem. I think it's all too easy to assume that it's over something as blunt as reward, but it's not. This is a complex situation. We know that some of it is around what's expected of a teacher in a classroom now. So when I talked about that blunt policy borrowing, the idea that a teacher would be told that they have to do something, but without being given the tools, without being given the why behind it, it's so demoralizing, so disenfranchising. And I think if you have the skills to be an excellent teacher, you have the skills to go and do a myriad other things that are probably actually easier. So we need to make sure that we are bringing that respect that what did you call it? The Guru Parampara?
Yes, the Guru
Yes.
Parampara.
We need that to be felt. We need to remind students when they're choosing their future professions that teaching is the sort of, it's like the umbrella profession of all, because unless that exists, underneath it nothing is flourishing. There are some really practical things that we've seen happen. So for instance, it was found in the UK that most teachers with young children were unable to go and see their child's school play because they were too busy doing the school play for the children for whom they were teaching. So there are some changes to the profession that we can make that makes it more attractive and more flexible. I think that technology in that has to be a time-saving tool. Some of the best places that we see the transformative power of technology is when it's used to support classroom activity, not to replace the teacher in some way. And I remember reading a really early study on EdTech before this kind of general release of AI. And it found that one of the most effective uses of technology in a classroom was basically a volume monitor. So it was measuring the decibels in a classroom. So when a teacher wanted to do quiet study time, they could say, okay, we're going to have a challenge, everyone. We have to make sure that the needle doesn't go up to the red. And this piece of technology was simply measuring how loud the classroom was. And the kids were motivated by trying to keep the needle under the red. I mean, that's a really amazing example of something that you wouldn't necessarily think is supporting learning, but it's absolutely helping that teacher in the moment to get the kind of classroom environment that they're looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lovely. And there's so many questions in the comments. It's just, it's all fired up. So I think I'd like to go to the audience questions now, Jane. I think, okay. Here's one question from Raman. He says, what do we do to ensure kids are not too reliant on AI, even if it's project-based activities? Like, how do we ensure that it's a good balance?
I think that comes down to that self-management piece that we were talking about. Students have to recognize that technology and AI is an amazing tool, but that cognitive offloading is dangerous. And I think we need to be explicit with children about what we know already about AI. There was a study that came out from the OECD, I think the week before last, about the impact of AI, that found what it's talking about, the shortcut effect, where students using AI had a short-term spike in performance. So they performed just after the use of the AI better, 42% better in maths, I think it was in Turkey. But then when they measured it a period of time after, those students were now scoring 17% worse than had they never used the AI at all. And we need to be talking to students, because we feel that, right? We need to be talking to students about the difference between having access to information and actually knowledge. You know, they can access any information they want right now, but knowledge comes from taking the information and working with it in your hands and in your brain, and really getting that kind of feel for it and understanding it and checking it. And we need to help students to understand that difference between information and knowledge, and to have the self-management to stop themselves from simply sort of possessing information rather than acquiring knowledge.
Oh, that's lovely. And I think you mentioned the term metacognition, I think, during your presentation.
Yeah.
And that's going to be something very critical. This self, the understanding yourself, how you think, is going to be critical to know and regulate yourself when it comes to the use of AI. I think.
Absolutely.
Great. Here's another question. This is from a very Indian context of students studying under the Cambridge board. Are they able to perform well to the competitive exams, which are heavily focused on rote learning? Which is such a very strong cultural context of where we are as Indians.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, so students taking Cambridge exams, we're very careful in the design of those exams so that they are not simply testing memory. That's when it comes to the higher order thinking skills, memory is not up there. Memory is really important. We need to get that rote learning for something so that we free up our thinking space to deal with more complex problems. So we need times tables, and there needs to be things that are rote in there. But a student taking a Cambridge exam will be being assessed on their skills as well as their knowledge. So actually, what should happen, and what we see time and time again from some of the outstanding learners in India studying a Cambridge education, is that they've got that balance. They've got the balance of enough knowledge to be able to pull it out when it's needed, but critically they have a whole toolbox next to them of the skills, so that they know what they need at what time. They understand what's being asked of them, which knowledge they're going to need, which skills they're going to need to apply that knowledge as well. So those competitive exams that you're talking about, I'm assuming that you mean Cambridge exams there, but even if those students are taking a national exam as well, they will have been equipped with that ability to not only acquire knowledge, but recognize that they're going to need skills to apply it as well.
And one of the ways that I answer this question is to look at these competitive exams, especially the national ones that we're referring to here. Yeah. I assume that's what he's referring to here. The national ones, which require a little bit of more focused rote learning, that's a bottleneck. I think that's just that 1 year of work that the students have to put in, because after that, when they go into their professional journeys, higher education, they are going to be using the skills that you mentioned, that you spoke about, where they're able to dip into their skill sets and they're able to perform much better at their higher education, at life, in fact, and not just at that one block, right? And I think,
and actually,
yes,
you've made a really important point there, and also when you are memorizing content for some sort of exam that's particularly about just testing that memory, if you are already equipped with skills to be able to understand, what might be particularly useful or helpful or interesting or different or remarkable about that knowledge, it sticks more. It's not just something that passes through your head and you've got to try and hold on to somehow. There are anchor points through those skills that mean that actually that information is retained better and it can be recalled better. Absolutely.
And I think there's a host of skills that we can teach children, and exam taking is just one of those.
Absolutely.
Like you said, I think it's just about balancing the two. I hope that answered your question, Venkatraman. Here's another question. Could you recommend tools and resources that make it easy for schools to keep up with the changing pace of AI and their impact on what it is doing to learning?
There are some fantastic podcasts. I think I would go with a trusted source, and perhaps not necessarily a source that's trying to sell you something. So I mentioned earlier Professor Rose Luckin. I highly recommend her blogs to anybody, but particularly for schools who are trying to really wrap their heads around what's happening with AI. She actually even does this amazing cookery show to explain AI, which sounds a bit random, but trust me, she's got an excellent way to show how AI is a lot like cooking a Victoria sponge cake. But choose a trusted source, so somebody who is coming at this for the right reasons, has the right values. Like this is not me saying I'm going to tell you all the best things about AI because I'm trying to sell you it. And to tune in regularly, so consume these things regularly, because I mean, even I think yesterday there was another update to one of the AIs, which particularly changed how it deals with coding. So these things are changing constantly, and it always rather worries me. My husband's a lawyer, and he's still of the view that AI is not really to worry about, because he's got so many cases that he can think about where, or recent examples where AI hallucinated some kind of case law. That's happening now. That will not be happening in 6 months' time. So we need to stay current with the understanding of how AI is changing. So choose a trusted source like Professor Rose Luckin, and consume it regularly, and really try and take little bits from it and apply them. So a chap called Matt Schumer wrote an article recently called something like "Something Big is Happening." It's quite an alarming article. I wouldn't read it if you want to sleep well about the future of AI. But at the end of it, he does give some practical suggestions. And one of them is, he says, spend an hour a day. I would say 15 minutes is sufficient, but using it. Really, familiarize yourself with what you think is great, what you think is worrying. And as a school leader or a teacher, sort of pick those little nuggets of things that you think could really work well in the classroom.
Brilliant. And I think that kind of sums up there has to be an intention behind keeping up with AI, and that intention, like you've said, set 15 minutes aside every day. And I think that will be useful. We're almost out of time now. And there are some links that Jane has shared with us, which we will be sending out to all the participants who've joined today, as well as the ones who have registered. So you can take this learning forward and not just end it here. Jane, this has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Well, for me too. Thank you.
And I think this is a topic we could go on for hours, right? I think this discussion is something that's so amazing and feels real. I think we are able to dispel with the fears of what's coming up in terms of AI if we are rooted in building the whole human being. Amazing learning. Thank you so much for spending the time with us and giving responses to all the questions that have come up. There are more questions which we are not able to address today. Can we collate those and send it to you for your responses?
Of course. I'd love that. And thanks for the great questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank you.
For all the rest of the audience, we will be having another session in just 15 minutes. That's another amazing session which talks about design of learning spaces. And I think that'll be fantastic for everybody, whether you're a parent or an educator, to learn about. And that is a friend for both Jane and I. Lena is going to be presenting next. And we will be seeing you in about 15 minutes. If you haven't already, go ahead and ensure that you are getting notifications from our channel as and when we are going live. So make sure that you click on the bell button and you keep updated. See you in about 15 minutes. Thank you, Jane. This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.